Join us now for the second half of a fascinating interview with Mr. Bill Thomas, author of the bestseller, The Shoe Leather Treatment.
When you're far, far away from your home, lean against the southern wind and dream.
Hi, welcome to another program brought to you by the Counseling Without Walls Foundation. I'm your host, Todd Whithorne, and today we have the second part of an interview with Mr. Bill Thomas. Bill is actually an escaped mental patient. He is the author of a best-selling book, The Shoe Leather Treatment. He's the subject of a made-for-television movie on NBC. He's also the president of the National Mental Health Association in LA County. He's a recipient of the Clifford Beers Award. Fascinating individual. On our first show, we talked about all the autocracies that took place while Bill was in Fairview Mental Hospital in Pennsylvania. And right now, Bill, I'd like to ask you to chronicle in a couple minutes what happened while you were in, and then I want to get into what you're doing now.
It sort of reminds me of the time the reporter put a microphone in front of me and said, "You got 1 minute to
No, take your
tell me life story."
No, very open.
Basically, what happened was that at an early age, I went through 4 very devastating personal experiences that I wasn't able to deal with as a result of losing my father and having a child born retarded and having my business embezzled and my wife leaving me. In a vain attempt to communicate with my dead father to seek forgiveness for a lot of bad feelings I had, I committed some rather bizarre crimes, breaking into the mausoleums, breaking into grocery stores for food. I became a derelict. I later tried to take my own life. And as a result of all those things, I was committed to a state institution for the criminally insane in Pennsylvania.
Not unlike the Cuckoo's Nest story.
Right, not unlike the Cuckoo's Nest. And for the 9 years that I was in there, I struggled not only with my own personal problems to try to understand what happened to me and to bring about a self-understanding because there wasn't any help available. They had one psychiatrist for 1,400 patients who never went beyond the front gates. So after a period of 9 years of fighting not only my own illness but the system, I finally was able to document a lot of the atrocities that were being committed in this institution, and then finally I was able to escape and went to sunny Southern California, where I am today.
Tell me just briefly about some of the things that happened while you were in the hospital.
Well, there were the actual murders of patients, the actual kicking patients to death, which was called the shoe leather treatment, the title of my book. There was a traffic in drugs, pornography, alcohol. There was misappropriating patient food monies. There were continuous beatings. It was a pattern, a way of life in that institution. Almost any kind of white collar and any other type of crime that you can imagine were going on in that institution, including phony autopsies. Every patient who died in that institution as a result of the shoe leather treatment, in the paper it said that he died of a coronary occlusion, a heart attack. Every patient in there.
It's an amazing story. I just can't begin to grasp. I know that it's just so terrible, but unless you've lived through it, evidently it's impossible to comprehend. Now, you escaped by just plain old walking out. I mean,
right. That's Edgar Allan Poe wrote in his purloined letter that the most obvious is the hardest to fathom. If you do something right in front of someone, most likely they won't see it. And I tried every conceivable way to get out of that institution except the most obvious way of all, and that was to literally walk out. And that's what I did. It was a master manipulation of events and time sequences to get in a certain position at a certain time, and to actually put myself in a position where I could actually walk out dressed up like a guard during a blizzard.
What was your first step after that? What did you do immediately?
I went to the most obvious place of all where they would not look for an escaped mental patient. I went to another state institution near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I hid out on the grounds of that institution.
You're kidding.
Went to I mean, who would look for an escaped mental patient
in another hospital?
Another state hospital. Sure. Anyway, I was able to make my way to California with the help of my mother. She always believed in me. She never gave up on me. And came to California, got a job immediately working at a gas station. I got a little apartment. I was doing just great. I just felt, God, this is a brand new life for me, and this is what life's all about. I feel good about me. I feel good about people that I'm running into. And my whole life has to be nothing but roses for me. And about 45 days later, after I was working at a gas station, the Los Angeles Police Department pulled in, and it's an instinct that you developed when you're involved with the law or in a penal institution or whatever. I knew that they were there for me. I just knew it. When they put their hats on and walked over to me and said, "Is there a Bill Thomas working here?" My first reaction was to say, yeah, he's in that back room, and I was going to run. But then I thought, I don't have to run because the law said that California never had an agreement with any other state regarding the return of escaped mental patient unless he had charges against him, which I did not at the time, or unless he was considered violent or dangerous to others or himself. I thought, well, I'm working, I got an apartment, I got friends, and whatever.
You had studied law when you were in the hospital.
So I said to them, I'm Bill Thomas. They immediately grabbed me, handcuffed me, and I said, why are you doing this, or what gives you the right to do this? They read a telegram that they had received, that the Los Angeles police received from the hospital, which stated that I was an extremely dangerous escaped mental patient. I was armed and had vowed not to be taken alive, and the utmost caution should be used in apprehending me. I think what the hospital was trying to do was set up a situation where maybe I'll just reach into my back pocket for a wallet or whatever, or a pack of cigarettes, and a young rookie cop might say, hey, he has a gun, he's boom, 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 and plant me away. That way, any of the documentation that I was able to acquire while in that institution, I'm talking about the movies and the tape recordings and the still photographs, that maybe they would never have to worry about them if they could get the Los Angeles police to shoot me. Anyway, they took me to Metropolitan State Hospital in Norwalk, California. Spent 4 days down there, and on the 4th day, a Sunday night, they called my name out for medication. And I went up to the nurse and I said, I don't take medication. And she said, well, you got to take it because the doctor ordered it. And I said, but why? I haven't done anything. She said, you either take it or we're going to give you a shot. I thought to myself, I'm not going to have a confrontation with any of the staff here. So I took this small cup of what I think was liquid Thorazine. If you don't take any medication, I mean, it really affects you. And I was like this. I mean, my eyes were rolling back in my head. My tongue felt like it was swollen in my mouth. And I finally went to bed. And a couple hours later, I guess it was a couple hours later, 2 highway patrol officers and 2 people from the hospital came in, got me up. Now, I had not shaven for 4 days. I still had on the grease-stained and wrinkled clothing that I had been sleeping in. They gave me an old dirty suit coat to put on and handcuffed me and told me they were taking me back to Pennsylvania. And the only thing that I could think of in this stupor that I was in is I would rather be dead than to go back there. When they got me in the police car, I tried to jump out of the police car on the freeway. I mean, that's how bad I was resisting going back to Pennsylvania. I couldn't jump out of the car because there were no door handles inside. Now, you know, a lot of people listening will think, God, he must have been crazy. And what they have to understand is that my value system was involved. I would have rather been dead than to spend the rest of my life in J ward at Farview State Hospital for the criminally insane, because in that ward is where they put you when they know that you are going to die. And what I mean by going to die is where you are abused every single day, where you live like an animal, you are fed like an animal, there is no toilet facilities, no bed, nothing. You are put into a room with no clothes on, and you stay there 24 hours a day, 5 or 7 days a week, 365 days a year, until you go stark raving mad, until you just die. And I knew that's what was in store for me. When they got me to the airport, in that one lucid moment that I had, like I had experienced a couple other times in my life, I reached out to Edgar Allan Poe and said, what do I do now? And he said, if they think you're crazy, act it. And to this day, Todd, I think I should have got an Oscar for my performance, because when they got me inside of TWA's terminal, I went bananas. I started to rant and rave and scream and holler and roll around the floor.
Just to attract attention.
Oh, I attracted attention, all right. I mean, I had 150 people gathered around. Finally, the airport authorities came up on the scene and they said, get that guy out of here. He's not getting on this plane tonight, tomorrow night, or any other night. So they took me back to Metro, gave me a shot, which knocked me out. The next morning I woke up and I thought, it was a nightmare. I mean, I couldn't even comprehend what I had just gone through. And I thought, maybe it was a nightmare. Maybe it didn't really happen because I'm still here. But then I looked at both of my wrists and I could see cut marks from the handcuffs where they had dragged me or pulled me behind my back. At noontime, they took me to stay up before a group of about 20 professional people. And when I walked in, everybody was sitting there with a kind of a serious look on their face. No one mentioned anything about the night before. And I felt I better not. And I'm not going to tell them about the tapes and movies or whatever, because I'm going to sound totally paranoid, because I don't have them to produce. So they proceeded to tell me that I was still very sick and I need a lot of help. And I said, I will do anything you people want me to do. I will take medication. I will take therapy. I'll stay here willingly. I'll do anything if you promise not to send me back to Pennsylvania. They looked at me and they all agreed that I was nuts. Certified crazy. Told me to leave the room. I walked out of the room and the first thought was, do I believe in who I am and what I'm all about, and do I believe that I am well? And I said, yes, I know I'm well. And people said, well, how do you know you were well, Bill? Because you were so crazy. Because I know what it feels like to be crazy. And I knew the way I felt then was not the way I felt in the 1960s. The first thing I started to do was look around at the drain pipes, and I figured I'm going to escape from here because I deserve to be free. While I was trying to escape, they called me back into staff, and this time everybody in the staff room had a different expression on their face. It was kind of like the cat that ate the canary, you know, like... The only thing that I can remember, it was so traumatic because it was so heavy, the conversation was, Bill, how long will it take you to get your things together? We're going to release you. And I just broke down, Todd, and just started to cry like a baby. That pressure, that 9-year pressure, was finally lifted off my shoulders. And I walked out of there 12 years ago a free man. Never to have seen a psychiatrist after that, except as friends today and my involvement with mental health. Never had any medication, never had any therapy. I give a lot of therapy to my friends that, you know, call and want to know what my magical solution was. But today I'm dealing in that. I'm not dealing with atrocities that are being committed. I don't really believe from my travels that there are many things happening, or that there are hardly anything in terms of abuses, physical abuses happening like happened to me and there's 1,400 other patients.
Have the conditions improved at all?
Well, as a result of me being in California and as a result of the Philadelphia Inquirer doing an in-depth investigation of the institution, they had heard about me, about the tapes and movies, and as a result they won a Pulitzer Prize. They were able to get a Senate hearing committee going on in Pennsylvania where they called hundreds of witnesses, and they kept me to the very last witness. I made public everything I had for the first time. The grand jury was then convened. They indicted over 200 of the employees from the superintendent on down, ranging from murder right down to perjury. They released over 1,000 of the patients, but the most incredible statistic of all is out of that 1,000 patients, and this was followed up by the Philadelphia Inquirer, they only had a 2% recidivism rate, and out of the 2% of people that got into further trouble, none of them did anything to another human being. It was either petty thievery, urinating in public, some non-violent or non-person type crime.
Sure.
That was the most staggering statistic of all.
Well, you travel all across the country now, and you're seeing the conditions. Are there particular states that are worse than others? Or
yeah, sure, obviously. What I'm doing today is spreading panic, is what I'm doing. I'm traveling around the country spreading panic. And people go, wow, what kind of panic are you spreading? I'm spreading panic that we're dealing with the #1 health problem in the country today. It's called mental illness. It affects 1 out of every 7 individuals. Someday we'll need the help of a professional. That's scary. It's costing us $40 billion annually to support this crazy thing called mental illness. One of the reasons why this illness is so big and widespread is because we have not been able to convince the American public that it's okay to hurt. That it's okay to say, hey, Todd, I'm all screwed up today. I don't know whether it's Monday or Friday or Sunday. I'm just all screwed up. People should be allowed to do that without you going, oh, God, I mean, he's crazy. I don't want to get near him. Wouldn't it be nice if I could do that and you would come up and say, hey, Bill, and put your arm around me and validate me? What I've done...
That's what's lacking, isn't it?
Right. And what I've done is I've developed some presentations where I can put an audience into a state of insanity for a brief period of time, where I get their anxiety level up to 4+, where it feels like they're going to explode. They get so angry at me, you can see their jaws just like this, because I'm putting the same kind of pressures on the audience that I went through.
That happens in the hospital, yeah.
Right. And what I do to the audience at the end is tell them that I'm going to cure them with the wave of a hand. I'm not going to single anyone out. I'm not going to ask anybody about their personal sex life, which I usually tell people I'm going to do, where I tell them I'm going to deliberately, with malice and very premeditatedly embarrass some of you people in the audience. And you see the anxieties go. You see people kind of slowly going behind a person in front of them because they think they're going to be singled out. What happens is that I tell the audience, what you were experiencing, you people that could be honest with me and said, yes, I feel anxiety right now. Yes, I'm a little bit schizophrenic because I'm under pressure. I don't want to be here. I'm imagining that I'm on a beach somewhere. And you people that won't identify the anger that you people have, and I can see it, you can't... What happens is when I ask the audience, are you feeling angry right now because I'm going to deliberately hurt some of you people, embarrass the hell out of you. Do you feel angry? Let me see a show of hands. No one will raise their hands. And I'll say, my God, I get a group of masochists in this audience. No one wants to identify that thing called anger, and it can be so healthy and so useful to an individual. But what happens is that after I cure all of them, I see, it sounds like somebody had let the air out of a giant balloon. Wow, that guy really put me under a lot of pressure. See, now if you can just for a brief moment remember to a lesser degree what you experienced, you'll know exactly what I went through, and if you know that, when you leave this room tonight, you will leave with something you didn't have when you come in here, and that's empathy. Total empathy. Not compassion, not sympathy, empathy. And if you can empathize with me, then I know that you can reach out to me, because when I tell you that my arm was broken and there's that deep-seated pain when it rains and you had a broken arm, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And that feeling will be there to want to try to console me and validate
So
me.
who do you speak to? Do you speak to mental health officials?
I speak to anyone who will listen. Mental health associations, I come down probably harder on them than any other group, because we are out there supposed to be advocating for the rights and dignity of people who are hurting. We're supposed to be promoting mental health and trying to prevent mental illness. In a lot of cases, we're not doing that, Todd. We're sitting back thinking that it always happens to the other guy, or the other guy's going to solve the problem. And that's not so. We all of us, you, me, all these camera people, David Odakowski, anybody is going to have to roll up our sleeves and get involved if we're going to do anything, make any kind of an impact.
You're a very credible man at this stage. How easy was it for you to break that stigma of an ex-mental patient
Well, you know,
when you first started out?
It's really interesting. I guess because people expect the ex-mental patient to have frayed collars, scuffed up shoes, cheap jewelry, and drive around an old beat-up Volkswagen. Well, when they see me pull up in a new Cadillac with a $300 suit on, and my collar isn't frayed and my fingernails are clean, well, golly, he looks just like I do. And I say, you're damn right I look like you, because I am you. I am not from another planet. I'm not from somewhere under the ocean. I am your neighbor. I am your brother, your father, your druggist, your delivery boy. I am you people. Usually this is a point that I make when I'm doing my stigma presentation, where I walk in unannounced with this old wrinkled grease-stained clothing on. I won't shave for 4 days. I take carbon paper, wipe it all over my face, mess my hair up. The only people that know I'm going to be there is a program committee. They'll feature another speaker, and I'll walk in and I'll sit down at one of the tables. And I'll say, is something bothering you about me? I mean, people, you know, they look and they don't want to touch me. I put the stinky cologne on. I put this old stinky cologne on. You know, people just...
I'm glad you didn't come like that tonight.
Well, I was thinking about some things. But what I do then, Todd, is I then just abruptly walk up to the podium and take over. And I tell the audience, I'm hurting right now. Can't you people see it? I mean, look at me. And the audience is, God, get that guy out of here. Yuck. And I say, well, let me tell you something. The thing that's hurting me right now is going to hurt every one of you, because I lost somebody that I loved and I can't deal with it. And each one of you are going to go through the same thing.
It happens to everyone.
All of a sudden, but see, people don't realize that. And all of a sudden I see a lot of sobering expressions take place. And what I do then is I fictionalize a story how I got this way, and then I put myself into the mental health system. Then I pull out my mirror and I put it on the podium. I get a jar of cold cream and I go through the process of feeling better, and I start wiping off the dirty look off my face, put my hair back in place, and I start taking my clothes off piece by piece during each phase of feeling better. And when I go right down to my shirt, the audience is standing there, just sitting there, just totally bewildered. You know, what is he doing? What's going on? And when I get to that point where I look in the mirror and I say, I like what I see, I pull my shirt open, and usually there's a does he have any clothes on type thing. And but what the audience sees is me standing there like I am right now with a three-piece suit on. And then I see all these brilliant expressions. Oh, I think I know what he's trying to say. I said, you're damn right, that's what I'm trying to say. I am you people.
There's no difference.
But when I walked in there, you stigmatized me. You discriminated against me. You looked and discriminated against a facade. And that's all they were looking at, a facade. The whiskers, the dirt, the grease-stained clothing, that's all they were looking at. But once I peeled all that off, they found out I was a human being, just like they are. And I've done that to the LA Rotary Club before. 450 top-level business people walked in the Hilton downtown like that, and they were blown away by it.
I can imagine someone watching. I can imagine someone watching, sitting back and saying, yes, but he's an exception. Somewhere along the line the system broke down and he was put in a mental hospital. You were crazy at first, quote unquote,
right,
but then you recovered. There are people that are watching saying that you're an anomaly, that you really shouldn't have happened. What are the percentage of people in mental institutions that are curable, that all they need is someone to
Well, I have seen so many of them. I guess just by the statistics of those 1,000 patients that were released from a state hospital for the criminally insane would give some indication that there are a lot of people being confined that probably shouldn't be there. I don't know what the percentages are, but what I have found, though, I do a lot of preaching, and I guess that's a good word for it. I go out and I say we got to validate people, we got to touch people, we got to hug people, we got to make people feel that they count in this world. And I decided that I've never really done that with people. You know, I believe it, but I've never really found out whether it works. And I decided to take the time to find out whether validating people really pays off. I had one gal that I spent 80 hours with up in the valley who psychiatrist had totally given up on. I mean, totally given up on. Spent 80 hours with that girl doing nothing more than using common sense. Not playing doctor, just validating her. 20 hours after I first met her, she finally took her head up from between her legs and looked at me and started to communicate. If that girl walked in here today, I would defy you to ever be able to identify that she had a mental problem. You know what it all boiled down to? The fact that her father had sex with her when she was a little girl. She had so... It was buried so deep in her own mind, it ruined every male relationship she had. No psychiatrist was able to get to it because they all had a vested interest. They all had the power to confine them, to medicate them, to shock them, and that's what happened to this girl. All I did was let her know that I can't shock your brain, I can't lock you up, I'm not taking money from you, I'm not charging you, I can't do a damn thing but validate you as a human being and say, I care about you. That's all I can do. Nothing more. And finally, that girl, I was able to penetrate all those defenses, and she started to talk. And it started out by saying, I have this terrible thing in my head where I picture this dark room that's very cold with a little light. And it was common sense. I said, well, what does dark rooms remind you of? Nighttime. Oh, and then her eyes started to get big. Nighttime. Well, what do you do at nighttime? Well, you go to bed. Oh, her eyes started to get bigger. All of a sudden, these things started to filter back through again. And boy, when she really got to that point, when I said, well, who did you stay with at that time? And she had to say her father. It was like I had reached over and squeezed her, and you saw this big demon come out of her mouth. Nothing. It wasn't even complicated to understand it. But her psychiatrist, all the hospitals she's been in, all they wanted to do was say, Diane, take this pill, and it'll help solve the problem.
What can someone do? I mean, you've gone through it, you've experienced it, you're obviously an educated man. You know, pragmatically speaking, you understand this. What can someone else do? I mean, there's not enough, evidently not enough funding, there's not enough staffs for the hospitals.
That's where the volunteers, that's where this organization that I belong to, the Mental Health Association, part of a network of 850 chapters coast to coast. Rosalind Carter was our honorary chairperson last year. What we have to do is people, caring about people. I mean, we rally behind all the health causes. I mean, whenever there's a disaster, we always, we're right there. But boy, when you talk about the mind, people get scared and they want to back off, and it's ugly. And the reason it's ugly is because we can't make it palatable to people. When you have a broken arm, you put a cast around it, and you go, wow, let me sign your cast, Todd. But if the bone had a compound fracture and the bone sticking out, you go, ooh, I don't want to look at that. You can't put a cast around the face. When you see the eyes drooping or you see the suspicious look in the eyes, you become fearful of it. It's not palatable to our senses. So we have a tendency to push it away. And what we got to do is to reach out to that person, because, boy, we can all go through it. None of us are exempt.
Well, it's not like you're giving. I mean, it's not like you're giving up something. It's like you're giving something, and when you do that, I would imagine it's a good feeling.
Oh, well, sure, it's a good feeling. If I could give you something, I'm going to feel good about it. I feel really good. I'm on a natural high all the time. All the time.
What can someone do who's watching? I mean, in terms of volunteering.
Reach out to somebody in their environment, because most people will tell you, and that are honest with you, that they know someone who's hurting right now, whose life isn't quite what it should be. Reach out and be a friend of those persons. Even if you get rebuffed 2 or 3 times, they say, I don't want to talk about it. Let them know that you're there, you're willing to talk, the door's open. Don't close the door on people.
Could they call your organization if they want to get involved in?
629-1527.
1527. And that's 213?
213. We're looking for a lot of volunteers.
That's the Mental Health Association.
Mental Health Association.
In LA County. It's a fascinating story. I can't begin to grasp how many people are actually suffering in this system, and there's no way they can get out and let people know.
32 million of them tonight are hurting as this show's being taped. 32 million of them. That's
how many people are actually confined to a state hospital? Do you know?
I think our population right now is about over 100,000 coast to coast. But what we've done is we've opened up these board and care homes, and it's something it's a sad commentary about us as a society that they're existing and flourishing, because they're nothing more. In many cases, there are some good ones, but there are a lot of them that are nothing more than an extension of the hospital. There is nothing being done to foster a patient's independence, to want him to get out and you know, get back involved in reality again, in the world, the real world.
Oh, jeez. It just baffles me. It's hard for me to comprehend. I know it's something you're involved in. Do you reach barriers when you try to go to talk to a hospital? Are people receptive to you? I would imagine you blowing the whistle on a lot of these institutions.
No, because you know what I do? You know what I do? I took a totally different tact in going in there. Instead of going in and saying, look at the patient lying under the bench, and look at the chipped wallpaper, and look at the total apathy on the part of the employees, what I've done is gone in there saying, my God, there's a wall clock. Isn't that fantastic? And look at that upholstered chair over there. And there's an employee talking to that crying patient. What I do is go in and accentuate the good, because then they can look at the employees that aren't doing that, and look at the right underneath the wall clock where the wallpaper's peeling away, or look at the upholstered furniture that's ripping on the seams. And hopefully, you know, I keep my fingers crossed that maybe they are just got that much decency that they'll say, God, let's do something about this condition. There are conditions in this institution.
We've run out of time, Bill. I want to repeat that phone number that you gave earlier, so that
Okay.
people, if they're interested in what you're saying, and I'm sure many are, could give you a call.
Absolutely.
That's area code 213-629-1527. That's the Mental Health Association of LA County. I'd like to thank you for joining in today. I hope you found something enjoyable and entertaining. On behalf of Counseling Without Walls, I'd like to encourage you to give us a call if you're suffering or having some problem. We try to help people in all areas: mental health, loneliness, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse. If you or a loved one is having some problem, please give us a call. On behalf of Counseling Without Walls, I'm Todd Whithorne, along with Bill Thomas. Thank you for joining us.
Far, far away from your home, lean against when you're far, far away from your home, lean against the southern wind and dream. Feel that wind cross the hill, let it carry you down below. The city lights are calling you. To be a dreamer, you must be strong. Seems like it's just in reach, and then it's gone. It takes so long. You gotta keep on dreaming. You gotta keep on